Hi, everybody. We're so excited to have you here. Welcome to our podcast. I'm Jennifer Winder, and this is Robin Mons, and we are here with Hungry for More. So today's podcast was inspired actually by a Facebook reel that I saw this week by Rachel Cruz, and I'm going to share that with you. I just love and adore her. It happens that right now I'm really interested in paying off bills and not having any bills. So of course, that's what pops up in my reels. But Rachel Cruz actually is Dave Ramsey's daughter. And so she grew up learning about conscious spending, essentially, right? And
Yeah.
this reel really caught my attention. So give me 1 second here to set it up. Let me put share sound. And I am going to start this for you. And it kind of cut off, but basically a few months ago is what she's talking about here.
I had this fear just like bubble up pretty intensely. And we were on a great vacation with my family, and our parents always treat us to one big vacation. And I'm watching my kids swim in this beautiful pool. And I sat there and I thought, oh my gosh, like when Rachel was that age, we went camping at the local lake, right? Like that's what we did. And it was great. I had a great childhood. I didn't have that with what my kids are experiencing. And I just had this moment of, have I already ruined them? Can a child hold experiences and gifts and blessings and still be okay? Because my kids are going to have a very different upbringing than what I had. Winston said something and I just really appreciated it. He was like, babe, I'm under the belief that what we set as a baseline as a family in our life of normalcy, that's what they're going to believe is normal. Meaning, if we set a baseline of normalcy that you don't get everything you want, we are kind to people, we are grateful. Like there are these baselines that this is how you live life. And then these spikes of fun happen, Disney World or a fun trip with family. These spikes of things can happen, but our life isn't living at the spike moments. It's living here. And this is our baseline. And if we're consistent on our baseline, that's good, that there's a grounding there. And I thought, oh, more's caught than taught. That's what I teach. And I'm like telling myself my own things. But truly, this idea that what we model as parents and the way we live our lives as parents is what our kids are going to assume is the way you're supposed to live life. So what baseline are we setting for our kids?
Okay. So the second I saw that, my mind went a million different directions of what example are we setting for our kids was one, because we had people ask us a lot about that, right?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah,
how do I help my children? Really through example and teaching.
totally.
But it made me think of these, we have all these podcasts that kind of tie in together. And it made me think of what is our baseline for eating, for conscious eating?
Conscious eaters.
Like, what is our normal? Is our baseline at like, what am I trying to say here? Is our baseline being conscious? Is that where we're normal for? And I was telling Robin, but when we were talking about this, that a few years ago, my husband and I were in Cancun. And I don't know what it is. There are some foods that I don't eat regularly that I may eat when I'm on vacation. And maybe sometimes I eat them when I'm home, but I do let myself indulge a little bit more when I'm on vacation,
Yeah. They're
especially
not part of your baseline
well,
rotation
the
everyday thing.
cultures, whatever it may be. Like we're going on a cruise in a few weeks and I may try things from different places, right? Because when do you get to experience that? It's not like it's every day. It's not my baseline. Okay. So I was remembering to when my husband and I were in Cabo about 2 years ago. And I was down by the pool one day and I wanted these nachos. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to have nachos. I hadn't eaten breakfast or lunch. Honestly, we had been running around. I think we had been zip lining that day. So I went and got nachos and I loaded them with their cheese and their meat and their all the stuff, right? I don't know what if I was starving that day or something. I don't think I was. Those were the best nachos I've ever had in my life. And we were there for 3 more days and I was going to make sure I was having them every single day because I loved them. Now, we've talked to you about you can still be conscious and enjoy the things. So I knew because I wanted the nachos that I was going to purposefully not eat lunch. Like that was going to be my lunch when I got hungry. So it wasn't like I was eating lunch and then trying to stuff those in. So I kind of worked it consciously that way. And I came home and I was fine. There wasn't like, it was fine. I felt good. I didn't feel gross at the end of the day. And it worked. I was trying to be conscious. And when I get home from my trip, I go back to my baseline, which is not nachos every single day. Okay. It doesn't mean that I have to go to Cabo to have nachos, though I've never found any as good as those. I will be honest about that. It doesn't mean I have to go to Cabo to indulge and to have those things. But the example is that wasn't my norm. That wasn't my baseline. When I go on trips, when I go on this trip in the next few weeks, I won't be necessarily eating foods that are at my baseline, but as I'm away, I will indulge and have fun. But what I won't do is leave my mind at home. You can still indulge and have your baseline and your conscious mind with you everywhere you go. So that's what that made me think of when I was doing it. And it's kind of, we talk about how conscious eating rolls over into every aspect of your life. That was a great example of how it does.
Right. So even just breaking that down, like when you're in Mexico, making that decision and deciding this is so delicious, I want this every day, making that decision with the foundation of conscious eating, meaning I'm going to eat it when I'm hungry. I'm not just going to eat it on top of everything. And also, no matter how delicious it is, when my body gives me the signal that I'm done, it doesn't matter what's left on the plate, I'm going to be done, right?
Right.
So the foundation of how we just conduct ourselves wherever we go. But the baseline, I think what when we were talking was this understanding of like, there are certain foods that just aren't your baseline every day, like the nachos for you, right?
Right.
And so it made me think, what was the baseline like a couple generations ago? It was usually 3 square meals a day, and it was maybe dessert at grandma's house on Sundays, right?
Right.
My dad growing up, he said his mom had dessert almost every night. But still, like their day wasn't full of snacks. It wasn't full of processed stuff. It wasn't full of treats and little candies and stuff, right?
Right.
So that's important to kind of determine what your baseline is, because of the environment we're in, that the stuff that we used to call special and a special occasion, or when we went on trips, it's available to us all day long.
Well, it's now normal. And you know what that makes me think about?
Mm-hmm.
This is so gross. I can't believe I'm admitting to it, but there's certain fast food restaurants. We just didn't get to eat out at fast food or at restaurants when I was growing up. It was for a special occasion. I can remember maybe 3 or 4 times going to an actual restaurant. And then I remember being out with my mom. And if we were hungry, but we weren't coming home anytime soon, and we went through a drive-through, it was like you're getting a hamburger and water.
Right.
It wasn't a Happy Meal with all the stuff, right? Or a kids meal wherever we went. And it was kind of funny because so when my children were born, anytime I went through a drive-through, I'm like, kids meal, kids meal. Because for me, my mom was feeding us for fuel to keep us full. But like for me, I was just like, it was available and I had the money. And so I was just buying it to buy it. And you're right, it wasn't available all the time. And even if it was available, it wasn't a choice. Like we were eating to be fueled.
Right. So that is the reality of, I can think of the exposure I have to the things that used to be out of the norm and special, right? That you'd be like, yeah, it's an occasion for this. And I can think of all day long, those things are available to me. When I go places, they're offered to me, right? At my home, kids bring home stuff all the time, or people drop by stuff. That's even if you're not buying it yourself. And of course, we buy treats and stuff and have them in the house every once in a while. And so it's just, is that your baseline? Right? That's the question. So I guess baseline, and we're still kind of teasing this out.
We don't want it to come off as diet mentality of, oh, you can only go off how you normally eat or whatever on vacation. That's not what we're saying. We want you to be conscious always, and you can be conscious on vacation and still indulge in some of those things that you don't eat every single day.
Right. I think a common baseline that we've adapted to, and again, we didn't kind of have a chance to debate back and forth together on this, but let's just tease it out right here. I think something that's become a common baseline is eating something sweet after every meal.
Right. I just had somebody bring that up to me. One of my children was here Sunday night and they said, why do I always want something sweet after I eat every meal?
Yeah, and we've kind of normalized that, or it's become what we call a conditioned eat, where that's just what we started doing. And it's like
Right.
the Pavlov's dog thing. It's like, oh, my brain knows every time I eat a meal, I top it off with something sweet. Like that's the last thing that I finish this off with. Now, if that is how you want to do it and it works for you, that's fine, right?
Right.
But if it's something, we have people ask a lot, like, how do I stop this habit? Because they recognize, for them, the way they're doing it, it is sabotaging their either weight loss goals, or they're not able to maintain where they're wanting to. And so that's an example of things that we do, that we create a baseline with it, where it's like, okay, you know, treats and desserts, those are the sort of things that usually, if they're a baseline norm of every day, you're not having much success, right? Or of every meal, especially. You're not really making the progress you're wanting to. And it's kind of looking at in your day of, what am I just kind of doing on a normal basis that I know is kind of hindering me, and bringing your baseline to the place where you're wanting it to be, where you know it'll help you. And it may mean, you know what, at first I start working on one of my meals, that I start taking this away as the norm, to have something sweet after. Like,
Right.
what are your thoughts? Like, we're just kind of in real time talking through this.
No, I think that's true. Well, and your baseline, I mean, like I'm thinking about what are baselines of other things. Okay. So here's a few thoughts that came to me on that. What's
Mhm.
my baseline of cleaning my house? I'm
Mm,
super good at sweeping and mopping and vacuuming and all the basic things, but I'm not good at cleaning shutters and like
yeah.
all extras, right? So it's kind of like I always come back to that baseline and then maybe throw something in. But I do agree with you on that. Like sometimes it may be necessary to change what your baseline is a little bit. And kind of how you said that, if you're somebody who wants a sweet with every meal, that was me 100% for sure. You just start cutting it out after each one. And slowly but surely you realize I really don't need that. I'm okay. And it's good. And sometimes you want it. Sometimes I do have a little treat after a meal when I've saved room for it and it feels like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah, but is it your baseline given, or is it something that you save for when it really matters to have a moment of pleasure
Right.
and drawn to it? And it's not just what you've kind of incorporated as the norm,
Right.
right?
It's kind of more of that peak on your baseline.
Right. So we're not necessarily the type that promote cheat days or a cheat meal or save it for once a week. That's the extreme over here. But the other extreme over here is where we've normalized and given a baseline to, like, I get pleasure whenever I want it. If
Right.
I see it and I want it, or I've created this habit where I have it after every meal, I'm going to, because that's just what it
Well,
is. So those, there's an in between there.
right. And just you got to watch too, because your mind can be a little tricky and say, well, I'm not full. I still have room for it. So I'm
Mhm.
going to eat it. And you could have that at every single meal.
Right.
But is it
Right.
helping? But you want to make sure that you're one, getting your nutrients, of course, always, but that
Yeah.
you have the baseline that you come back to that's
Too.
giving you those results that you want. So
Right.
it's kind of more out of the norm of what
Right.
you were used to.
This is all exactly. It's not either or, right? Right and wrong, yes, no, or always at this time it's allowed and not allowed. It's not even about that. And it's not even about the food itself. It's, are the things that I've incorporated into my baseline supporting me in the long run? Or am I always sabotaging myself by including these?
Right.
I know for me, everybody responds differently. My body, I can have a treat with one of my meals a day, and it's not going to spike me up and make me gain. But other foods, like more on the grain side, if I consistently have those piled on daily, even if once a day, my weight will fluctuate up. But that's, my body's given me that feedback. And so I've made my baseline based on that, not by anybody outside of me saying, yes, once a week this is allowed, or make sure it's only this many calories. It's my body giving me that feedback. And this is ultimately what we're saying. Who decides your baseline? What decides your baseline? You and your body. Your body's going to give you the feedback of how that's going. You having, let's go back to our example. Every time I have a meal and I have end it with dessert, how is that going? Is that supporting you? What feedback is the body giving you?
Right.
And from there, making those decisions. And it's so much when you're making the decisions from that place versus it being about the food and if it's allowed and if it's, the special thing and whatever, then that's when we get in that yucky energy and we feel deprived if we decide not to. And it's really not about that. I can have the very dessert I'm wanting every day after lunch. The dessert itself, I can have, but how I'm utilizing it and how I'm utilizing it becomes important.
Right.
And yeah.
Yep. No.
Attention.
So the question you want to ask yourself is, what is your baseline? What does that look like? Where are you in regular day-to-day life? And when you have, the other things that maybe go away from what you're doing, is that your baseline or the peaks? Right?
Right. Where we call, and we've done podcasts on that, we call them pleasure eats. Pleasure eats should be peaks. They should not be the baseline thing, only because of how they tend to interact with the human body. Right.
Right.
And we can do all of that without labeling and putting moral value to anything, but just really recognizing, man, when I'm choosing something that's more of a peak experience and I'm thinking I should have it several times a day, that isn't really realistic in living in any other area of our life. Like we said, like you're not going on vacation every other day just because you want to. There's responsibilities and there's balance and there's, saving up for all of that. So similar to that, bringing that mindset here. What's the baseline? Keeping the peaks. Those are the pleasures of life, but watching how both of those are working for you with the foundation of conscious eating at the bottom of all of it. Right? Even if you're like, yeah, I do have the conditioned habit to eat something sweet after every meal, and I'm not ready to give that up. Okay. Foundation, be conscious.
Right.
Do save the room in your stomach. You eat the nutrients first.
Yeah, if you know you want the treat, save the room for it.
And you have the intention to do it anyway, there's still that foundation where you don't have to throw it all away. So
Right, absolutely. Okay, so that's your homework. What is your baseline? Figure that baseline out and see where you're having your peaks and see if you're accommodating to that, right? Is accommodating the right word? See if you're being conscious to that so that when you have those peaks, you allow for that.
right. Yep. We want it to be supportive, whatever you choose.
All right. Bye, everyone.